Succulent pork, spicy green peppers, tart tomatillos. You're not going to want to miss today's episode. Welcome to Food Bar. Today we're going to be making chile verde. Let's get started. So today's dish is chock full of green. Verde means green in Spanish. So here we're looking at tomatillos, chili peppers, bell pepper, garlic and onion, tomato. Our spices are cumin and salt and pepper, garlic powder, chicken bouillon, and chicken broth. And we're going to be working with these ingredients. I want to take a moment to look at the pork. I have cubed it here in advance, and I want to show you the size. They're bite-sized pieces, approximately an inch, maybe a little smaller than that. I've saved the bone, the pork shoulder bone, and trimmed it. I'm going to be cooking that in the stew as well because it brings a lot of flavor. So here I'm going to weigh our meat. We're going to zero out the scale. Once you put your bowl on, you want to make sure you hit that tare button, zero out your scale. You want to look for a pork shoulder. Sometimes it's referred to as pork butt. They're usually around 5 pounds, but once you have chopped it up and trimmed off the excess fat, you're going to end up with about 4 pounds. I like to know what I'm using and what I got out of my purchase. So here it's 4 pounds and about 3 ounces. And let's go ahead and measure out our spices. Here I have a tablespoon of garlic powder. I end up using 2 tablespoons, and I'll show you later in the video. And I start out with a tablespoon of salt, and I end up using an extra half of a tablespoon down the road. Here we have 1 teaspoon of cumin. We have a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. So we measure that out. I like to make sure I measure my spices. And then we are going to measure out 1 teaspoon of the powdered chicken bouillon. Kind of ties everything together. Now we're going to take our veggies to the colander here and give them a quick rinse. Our peppers, our bell pepper, our tomatillos, a nice little wash. Get them ready for the cutting board. Now one thing I do in this recipe is I will take and blanch the tomato all by itself because I want to peel the tomato. So that's what I'm doing in this step. So we'll get that started. And that's going to go on the stovetop. Okay, I've got my workstation ready here. I've got my meat, my garlic powder, my salt. I've got the tomato that's getting ready to be blanched so that it's easier to peel. We'll keep that covered up there, and we're ready to go. Alright, we're back at our cutting board here. We're going to make our green sauce. I brought over my onion and garlic to this area here. My veggies are washed and dried and ready to go. I've got my spices lined up here. The chicken broth is measured and ready to go. I like to have everything around me when I'm getting started so that I don't have to go around the kitchen and look for it. This is easier. So we'll get the chicken broth in the blender first. We're going to take the stems off of the peppers. Here I'm using about 7 serranos and 2 jalapenos. That's going to make for somewhat of a spicy chile verde. Sometimes I'll add more depending on who I'm cooking for. I'm going to quarter this onion, and we're just going to use 1/4. We're taking the peel off, and we're going to give it a rough chop, and it goes into the blender. Now the garlics are already peeled. I'm just going to take this little stem off the top and give these a rough chop also and toss them in the blender. We're going to take the serranos now and give them a head start as well. And in they go into the blender, seeds and all. And then we're going to put these in the blender, and we're going to move on to the jalapenos. I like to add jalapenos to a chile verde. They have a distinct flavor. My favorite is a serrano, but definitely want to add that jalapeno for the flavor that it lends. And then I'm going to quarter these tomatillos and get as many of them as I can in the blender. And I have a few more tomatillos to go. And I've got those quartered now. But I'm going to take a look and see how my tomato is doing over here. The skin is coming loose from the tomato. And that's all I really wanted to do. I do not want to cook this tomato any further. I just want to be able to take that peel off. You don't want to have that peel in the blender, because they tend to not break down, and they turn into these little sharp fibers in your sauce. So that peel has got to go. So I'm going to take this out of the pot and just finish peeling it here on my cutting board and get that stem off the top. And it's going to go right into this mixture, into this blender, along with everything else to join the party. Okay, so we're going to do these tomatillos in a bit. Let's get started on this bell pepper. A bell pepper is a key ingredient in a good chile verde. In addition, a yellow, we call them chile güero. My hometown, my parents would call them chile güero. It's basically a yellow pepper. If you can find a yellow pepper in your store, if they're in season, definitely add one here. It's going to have a delicious flavor, just like that bell pepper does. All right, our cumin, our pepper goes in, our chicken bouillon. We've got our flavorings in here. We don't add any salt here. We're going to be adding plenty of salt to the pork. So let's get this started. We're going to get this blended up just until it comes together. Everything is raw except that blanched tomato. That's the only thing that got a little bit of heat. Other than that, this is a raw, bright green sauce. And interestingly enough, that red tomato is now hidden in all the green, and you don't really see any red. This sauce stays verde. Okay, so we're going to add the rest of the bunch of tomatillos and give those a mix. And then we're going to have our green sauce completed and ready. And we're going to stage it right over here by our workstation, where we're going to be working on the pork and frying it down. Okay, we're going to heat up this pan. We're going to get it nice and hot before we put the oil down. You got to make sure that this pan is ready for the oil, because what it does is when the oil goes down and the pan is really hot, you will see those little wavy lines on the oil, and that is what you want to see. That is going to seal the pan or fill in the pores. Stainless steel has pores, and hot oil placed in the pan like that is going to give you and make a non-stick surface. But if you skip that step, everything is going to stick to this stainless steel, and it's just going to be very difficult to fry this pork down without shredding it, because it's going to stick to the pan. But that's just one of the tips I want to make sure that you're aware of. So I'm laying down the pork here on the pan because I'm about to put the rest of it. I just don't want it to splash. So I laid a little bed of the chopped pork, and now I'm just going to add the rest. That way I don't get anything splashing back at me. You spread that out. I'm going to add that pork shoulder bone here in a minute, but I want to season my pork first. We're putting down the 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, and here I end up adding an additional tablespoon of garlic powder, so 2 tablespoons of garlic powder to 4 pounds of pork, and starting out with 1 tablespoon of salt, but I do end up adding another teaspoon to a half of a tablespoon more. So I just wanted to make note of that. And there I am adding that additional tablespoon of garlic powder. All of that's going to go down. Season this pork real well. And of course, there's that other half a tablespoon I was telling you about. I go by, when I'm seasoning the pork, I go by what it feels like in my fingers. So it's hard sometimes to be able to know how much salt I used. I literally have to feel it flow through my fingers and then measure it. We're going to let that start to heat up, and the pork is going to release its juices. So I'm going to start to show you that process. This is very important, a very important part of getting this pork cooked just right. So here it's just starting. Oh, we forgot to add the bone. So here it goes, and now don't forget to season it. Season as you go. A little bit of garlic powder on both sides. Get this in here while it's still early. And a little bit of salt. And it's coming in to join the party. That bone is going to add so much flavor to this chile verde. Okay, so that's going to stay covered up for a while on a medium-high heat. I'm going to be cooking down some beans here. That's going to be my side dish. So I'm working alongside the chile verde here to mash these beans. But we're going to take a pause here and take a look at what is going on with this pork. Do you see all of the juices? I literally did not add any liquid to this at all. I put oil down, and that's all, and the pork and the seasoning. Nothing else went down here. So this is the juices that are being rendered from the pork itself. So you're going to cook this down right in the pan for anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. And then it's gonna, all of the liquid is gonna evaporate, and you're gonna end up with the rendered pork fat, and it's gonna be sizzling right in the rendered pork fat. But here I am, just on the side note here, getting some, speaking of rendered pork fat, onto the skillet and getting that nice and hot. Once again, I like my skillet to be hot when my oil or fat goes down. You can see that kind of smoking a little bit. No problem, that's what we like. We want the beans to sizzle when they go down. Absolutely, you gotta have that step. Okay. We got a little serrano. We're gonna take that out, chop it up. That's just the serrano that was in the beans when I cooked them down. So we're gonna get all that in the pan. We're gonna chop up this serrano in a minute here and put that in the pan as well. This has nothing to do with the chile verde, but this is what I was doing on that day. I figured I would add a little video since I was working alongside the chile verde here. So in goes that little chopped serrano, and we're just going to give these a mash and work it. It's going to take you a little while. You need a little bit of elbow grease. Get all of your energy behind that masher, and then you'll have a nice smooth puree in those beans. Okay, so here we go. Where are we on this meat? Let's take a look. Well, we've got quite a bit of a liquid. I'm just tossing this meat around, making sure everything is coated. Everything has a chance to be in the liquid. Very important. And we're just covering that up. Again, that meat is on a medium high, and it's going to continue there until that liquid is gone. And as you can see, a lot of it is disappearing. What we're looking at now, those bubbles you're seeing, is the rendered pork fat that's coming from the pork. Not to mention, we did put some oil down in the pan when we started out. So this meat, this pork, ends up in the fat the end. And this is where you're going to get the crispy browning sizzling of the pork. And that's going to add so much flavor to this chile verde. And you'll notice also there I'm pointing at the grease. You want to make sure that the pork is getting coated in that grease. But I was talking about the browning that's going on the skillet and on the pork. Okay, I'm going to cover this up one last time. 5 minutes later. Okay, everything looks good. Everything looks good. Now I'm going to drain the fat. Time to scoot the meat over, and we're going to get rid of all of this fat. This is a very important step. Always drain your fat before you add the sauces. Okay, you can use that. You can use that oil for other things. It's garlicky. It's salted. It's seasoned. You can use that later. Okay, we're going to put down our green sauce right in the hot sizzling pan. This is going to start to deglaze that pan. All of the brown that you see on the pan is going to come up right in the sauce. So that adds a ton of amazing flavor you don't want to miss out on. So I like to scrape down my containers and get every bit of goodness out. Okay, so here we are with the very bright green. Like I said, everything was in the raw except that one tomato that was blanched. So you start out with the very bright green color. You're going to take a couple of handfuls here of cilantro. Just tear a few leaves off, set those down in the middle, and we're going to lower the temperature. As this cooks down, you will see that bright green color start to change. It will start to change to a different green. It's not as bright, so it is going to lose that brightness. Now that it's come to simmer, I want to taste it. Always taste what you're doing. Take a minute to stop and see if anything is needed. Check for salt. So here, everything is checking out okay. Absolutely. I don't believe it needs any salt. Tastes pretty good. The meat is good. Doesn't need anything added extra. Everything is checking out good. A thumbs up. Very good. Okay, so now we are going to put this on a low simmer for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we're going to be done. Okay, so it is 25 minutes later. We're just going to take a look, make sure everything looks good. That cilantro is in there. You can only see a few leaves of it here and there, but that's going to add a special unique flavor as well. Just a very small hint of cilantro there. It's all cooked down now, and this chile verde is done. You want to let it cool for a little while before you serve. And we're going to get some tortillas warmed up. We're going to warm up those beans as well. The hubby is home, and we're going to be serving dinner. We're going to warm up these tortillas. These are corn tortillas. You can also serve this with flour tortillas. Absolutely a favorite in northern Mexico. Flour tortillas. I like them both. Okay, these are nice and toasted. These are ready. Keep them in a nice warm bowl. Cover them with a towel or a flour sack, whatever you have. And dinner is served. Okay, very good. Everything is piping hot and ready to go. Yummy. Chile verde and some beans and some warm tortillas.
Amazing. It was really amazing. The pork is muy sabroso. Muy sabroso. It's chile verde.
I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to everybody for cooking with me in the kitchen today and making my chile verde with me. It's been a long time since I've made a video on foodbar.com, but I really hope to get back at it. This quarantine has allowed for a lot of extra time, and I think this is a good time for all of us to reflect on those things that bring us hope and happiness. For me, cooking is very therapeutic. I love to share my love for the kitchen with my friends, with my family here on YouTube, and it's important that we look for those things that we're passionate about and keep them alive in our life, especially during this time that seems kind of bleak, and sometimes it can get difficult during this quarantine, but we're all in this together, guys, and I just want to say thank you for being with me today and cooking with me here on foodbar.com. Thank you.